The Fourth Way by P.D. Ouspensky. Chapter 1. And this chapter, at least this part of this chapter that I'm going to be reading now, is in the form of a Q&A session. Now, I think the questions are being asked by Ouspensky and the answers given by Gurdjieff. In the book that I am reading from, it says Q period, A period. I think it might be easier for me to say question and then read the question, then answer, read the answer. If that drives you nuts, if you want me to just say Q and then A, let me know in the comments below, okay? Let's see how this goes. I have just given you some general ideas. Now try to tell me what you do not understand, what you wish me to explain better. Try to ask any questions you like, either in relation to what I said or to your questions. In that way, it'll be easier to make a start. Question. To attain the higher state of consciousness, is it necessary to be permanently aware of oneself? Answer. We cannot do that, so there is no question of being permanently aware. We can only talk now about the beginning. We must study ourselves in connection with this division of different functions when we can, when we remember to do it, because in this we depend on chance. When we remember, we must try to be aware of ourselves. This is all we can do. Question. Must you be able to be conscious of your instinctive functions? Answer. Only of the senses. Inner instinctive work does not need to become conscious. It is conscious for itself, independently of the intellectual function, and there is no need to increase this. We must try to become conscious of ourselves as we see ourselves, not of our inner functions. After some time, we may become aware of certain inner functions of which it is useful to be aware, but not yet. You see, we do not require... No, let me start the sentence over again. You see, we do not acquire any new feelings. We do not acquire any new feelings. We only classify better our ordinary impressions, the ordinary things we get from life, from people, from everything. Question. Would it be correct to say that when learning anything, like driving a car, intellectual function tells moving function what to do, and that when proficient, moving function works by itself? Answer. Quite right. You can observe many things like that. First, you learn by intellectual function. Question. How important is the knowledge gained by watching our physical actions? Is it merely an exercise for watching our minds? Answer. No, it is very important because we mix many things and we do not know the causes of many things. We can understand causes only by constant watching for a long time. Question. May we have instruction about how to work on each of the four functions? Answer. All that will be explained, but for the present and for a long time you can only observe. Question. Would it be an example of different eyes working when one goes to bed late and fully decides to go to bed early next night, and when night comes does otherwise? Answer. Quite right. One eye decides and another has to do it. Question. How do we set about trying to be more conscious of ourselves? Answer. This is quite simple to explain, although it is very difficult to achieve. There are no roundabout ways. A better state can only be achieved by direct effort, just by trying to be more conscious, by asking oneself as often as possible, am I conscious or not? Question. But how does one attain any certainty that your method is right? Answer. Just by comparing one observation with another, and then we talk when we meet. People speak about their observations. They compare them. I try to explain that they cannot understand. No, I try to explain what they cannot understand. There are other people who help me, and in that way one becomes sure of ordinary things, just as one knows that the grass is green. There is no question of faith or belief in all of this. Quite the opposite. This system teaches people to believe in absolutely nothing. You must verify everything that you see, hear, and feel. Only in that way can you come to something. At the same time, you must realize that our machine does not work perfectly. It works far from perfectly because of many wrong functions, so that a very important part of self-study is connected with the study of these wrong functions. We must know them in order to eliminate them. And one of the particularly wrong functions, which we sometimes like in ourselves, is imagination. In this system, imagination does not mean conscious or intellectual thinking on some subject or visualization of something, but imagination that turns without any control and without any result. It takes very much energy and turns thinking in a wrong direction. Question: when you say imagination, do you mean imagining something to be true, not drawing pictures? Answer: imagination has many aspects. It may be just ordinary daydreams, or, for instance, imagining non-existent powers in oneself. It is the same thing. It works without control. It runs by itself. Question: each one is self-deception? Answer: one does not take it as self-deception. One imagines something, then believes it, and forgets that it was imagination. Studying man in his present state of sleep, absence of unity, mechanicalness, and lack of control, we find several other wrong functions which are the result of his state. In particular, lying to oneself and to other people all the time. The psychology of ordinary man could never be called, the psychology of ordinary man could even be called the study of lying, because man lies more than anything else, and as a matter of fact, he cannot speak the truth. It is not so simple to speak the truth. One has to learn how to do it, and sometimes it takes a very long time. Question: would you mind explaining what you mean by lying? Answer: lying is thinking or speaking about things that one does not know. This is the beginning of lying. It does not mean intentional lying, telling stories, as for instance, that there is a bear in the other room. You can go into the other room. You can see that there is no bear in it. But if you collect all the theories that people put forward on any given subject without knowing anything about it, you will see where lying begins. Man does not know himself. He does not know anything, yet he has theories about everything. Most of these theories are lying. Question: I want to know the truth that it is good for me to know in my present state. How can I discover whether it is a lie? Answer: for almost everything you know, you have methods of verifying. But first, you must know what you can know and what you cannot. That helps verifying. If you start with that, you will soon hear lies, even without thinking. Lies have a different sound, particularly lies about things we cannot know. Question: as regards imagination, if you are thinking instead of imagining, should you be aware of the effort all the time? Yes, you will be aware of it. Not so much of effort as of control. You will feel that you control things. They do not just go on by themselves. Question: when you say remember yourself, do you mean that to remember after you have observed yourself, or do you mean to remember the things we know are in us? Answer: no. Take it quite apart from observation. To remember oneself means the same thing as to be aware of oneself. I am. Sometimes it comes by itself. It is a very strange feeling. It's not a function, not thinking, not feeling. It is a very different state of consciousness. By itself, it only comes for very short moments, generally in quite new surroundings, and one says to oneself, "How strange, I am here." This is self-remembering. At this moment, you remember yourself. Later, when you begin to distinguish these moments, you reach another interesting conclusion. You realize that you remember from childhood, that what you remember from childhood are only glimpses of self-remembering, because all that you know of ordinary moments is that things have happened. You know you were there, but you do not remember anything exactly. But if this flash happens, then you remember all that surrounded this moment. Question: can one, with observation, be aware that one has not got certain things? Is one to observe things from a point of view of everything being possible? Answer: I do not think it is necessary to use such a word as everything. Just observe, without any guessing, and observe only what you can feel. No, sorry, I read that wrong. Just observe without any guessing, and observe only what you can see. For a long time, you just have to observe and try to find out what you can about intellectual, emotional, instinctive, and moving functions. From this, you may come to the conclusion that you have 4 definite minds. Not only one mind, but 4 different ones. One mind controls intellectual functions. Another, quite different mind, controls emotional functions. A third controls instinctive functions. And the fourth, again quite different, controls moving functions. We call them centers: intellectual center, emotional center, moving center, and instinctive center. They are quite independent. Each center has its own memory, its own imagination, and its own will. Question: in the case of conflicting desires, I presume that if one had enough knowledge of oneself, one would be able to see to it that they did not conflict? Answer: knowledge by itself is not sufficient. One can know, and desires can still be in conflict, because each desire represents a different will. What we call our will, in the ordinary sense, is only the resultant of desires. The resultant sometimes reaches a definite line of action, and at other times cannot reach any definite line, because one desire goes one way and another way, and we cannot decide what to do. This is our usual state. Certainly our future aim must be to come to oneness instead of being many, as we are now, because in order to do anything rightly, to know anything rightly, to arrive anywhere, we must become one. It is a very far aim, and we cannot begin to approach it until we know ourselves. Because in the state in which we are now, our ignorance of ourselves is such that when we see it, we begin to be terrified that we may not find our way anywhere. The human being is a very complicated machine and has to be studied as a machine. We realize that in order to control any kind of machine, such as a motor car or a railway engine, we should first have to learn. We cannot control these machines instinctively, but for some reason we think that ordinary instinct is sufficient to control the human machine, although it is so much more complicated. This is one of the first wrong assumptions. We do not realize that we have to learn that control is a question of knowledge and skill. And I'm going to pause here and continue next time. Till soon.